This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so I assume everybody can hear us at this point?
Yeah, they should be able to hear, so let's confirm and see if people can hear.
Well, let's see, how do I?
So, hit those arrows again.
Can we get a thumbs up if we're being heard?
All right,
Great.
okay.
Great. Thank you. Okay, and we're recording. Okay, well, welcome everybody to the public meeting for the Honeysuckle and 4th Roundabout project. We really appreciate you being here. This meeting is for you, so we're going to attempt to provide you as much information as possible to arm you with info so you can fire questions at us. My name is Matt Gillis with Welch Comer Engineers, and I'm having trouble advancing the slide already. Okay. We're a private consultant hired by the city of Hayden to perform the design. With me here tonight is Alan Soderling, Public Works Director, Melissa Cleveland, the Planning Director, and apologies, not mentioned is Rob Wright, City Engineer. So the meeting format, we will have a Q&A session, but I'll give a 10 or 15 minute presentation, again, just to give you as much information as possible. So you're accelerate your learning of the project. Following that, I'll stay as long as you'd like and answer as many questions and hear your feedback. That's what we're looking for. Fantastic. So why are we contemplating a roundabout at this intersection? There's lots of reasons. One of the first reasons is this intersection has been analyzed time and time again, and the results in the city's published documents, one of them being the comprehensive plan, Imagine Hayden comprehensive plan, has a transportation element to it, and within that element, this intersection was identified as a priority to deal with some traffic congestion and calming. Similarly, the city's transportation plan, which, as you can imagine, focuses solely on transportation, also lists this as a very high priority project, perhaps even the number one priority, close to the number one project in the city, because we know growth is coming. There's the congestion issues we're dealing with, and there's also a safety concern at this intersection. Just in the last few years alone, there's been several accidents, some of those injuries, all of those property damage. The other reason that we believe a roundabout is appropriate for this intersection is when we get into looking at intersection treatments, this one in particular. So right now we have a stop control intersection, and you all know that. We can either put in a traffic signal or a roundabout. When we start looking at the differences between the two, there's a lot of criteria that we can look at. And you can see my mouse, correct?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. In this particular location, when we look at all these criteria, and I won't go through all of them, but I will touch on a few of them as we go through, the roundabout is superior in most elements. One of the most elements is safety. This graph is super impactful, and it's based on accident data. If a pedestrian is hit by a vehicle going 40 miles per hour or more, there's a 90% chance there is a fatal. 9 out of 10 are fatal.
Well, I'm doing that virtual thing, but I couldn't get it up on that in there. So.
We're hearing some feedback.
When we ask for questions, we'll unmute them.
Okay.
Okay, sorry, we just muted some people just to cut down on the feedback, but we'll unmute you later.
So as I was saying, as speeds slow down, say 30 miles per hour, half the people will survive a 30-mile-an-hour crash. And by people, I mean the pedestrian. And those are traffic signal speeds. So as you can imagine, if a driver fails to stop at a red light and blows through an intersection, that's where we see these higher speeds. Whereas a roundabout, it's very difficult to go more than 20 miles per hour. And as you can see, there's a 90% chance a pedestrian survives at roundabout speeds. So from a speed standpoint, much safer.
Okay, I'm sorry. Before you move on, I just want to make sure that, hey, William, would you mind giving me the thumbs up that you can still hear us? Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Some other safety statistics that we thought were useful to show is, this is from the Federal Highway Administration, is when we switch from a stop control intersection to a roundabout, and they've compiled all the accident data, there's a 37% reduction in overall collisions, 75% reduction in injury collisions, 90% in fatality collisions. And that's because of that speed issue we talked about for the most part, and then a 40% reduction in pedestrian collisions. So it's measurable, and it's clearly, especially in our particular situation, a better option than what we have today and a traffic signal. Another criteria we look at is, how does the intersection perform from a traffic standpoint? And by performance, we kind of measure that in delay. So the longer you sit at an intersection, the more poorly it performs. And instead of measuring it in seconds, which we do, but we try to equate that to more of a standardized level of service. And think of it as like your grades in school, where if you get an A, you're performing fantastic. If you get an F, well, clearly you're failing. Same thing for traffic. Level of service A, no delay, everything's wonderful. Level of service F, it's gridlock, and you're probably angry sitting in your car. So I don't want to intimidate you with all the tables, but there's a couple things in here that are important to understand. So this top table represents the present traffic. So the latest traffic data we have is from 2019. And if we look at the existing intersection, with today's traffic, or 2019's traffic, ultimately it's functioning at a level of service D, which is not good, clearly not good. If we take that same intersection and we build the roundabout, which I'll show you, it improves to a level of service A. So the delay goes down significantly. Now, as we fast forward 20 years, when we try to design our transportation facilities to around the year 2040, as you would expect, the existing intersection, again, if we did nothing in 20 years, it's failing, okay? But the roundabout, this is interesting. If we built the roundabout, it's performing at an A in today's traffic, and even an A in 2040's traffic. So this roundabout, with the growth that we anticipate, which is, we expect a lot, will function very well. So this is probably the first time you are seeing the roundabout. I was just going to run through a couple of details of it. So on this particular image, north is up. This is a single lane roundabout, so similar to most of them that you've seen in the area. The pedestrian circulation pedestrian and bicycle circulation, I should say, is pretty voluminous. There's a lot of access in here. So if you, for example, if you're a bicycle heading north on 4th Street, you're more than welcome to stay in the roundabout and where all the vehicles are, or you can jump off the street onto the path and pedestrian facility, cross like a pedestrian, and get back on the existing path systems. You'll notice there's pedestrian crossings on all 3 legs. with connections into the existing triangular park that's there today, just west of the current intersection. The city does, with the current design, we do expect to move the roundabout, we do expect to move the center of the intersection slightly northwest, mostly west from where it is today. And the reason we're doing that is to minimize as much as possible impact to adjacent properties. So because this triangular parcel is the city's, it makes sense to move it as far west as we can. We can only go so far before we start losing the ability to get trucks through. But we'll talk more about right-of-way here in just a moment. The roundabout's wide open, sight distance is not a problem. And then the center island, there'll be, which I'll show you on the next slide, there's opportunity for some landscaping. This aerial rendering is actually looking from the north south. So this is 4th Street here. This street is heading down to Honeysuckle Beach, and I apologize the street names aren't on here. And then this leg of Honeysuckle is heading west over to Government Way. So you can see the scale of the vehicles and the people able to cross pedestrian areas. Each of the pedestrian crossings will be illuminated with 2 lights, which will illuminate the entire intersection. Again, there's the opportunity for landscaping in the middle. This red colorful area is actually what we call a truck apron. The truck apron is not a sidewalk. We do not want people in the middle of the roundabouts. Rather, it's for the back tires of a big truck as they make turns through these roundabouts. A lot of times we get asked or told, oh, it's never going to work. This roundabout will not work and trucks will never get through it. This is a mistake. And sometimes they're right. You know, these 2 pictures show either it was an inexperienced driver, it was a poorly designed roundabout, or it was just too large of a truck designed for that particular roundabout. So I say that just to help to make sure the audience understands that we think about these things. And so think about a large Walmart truck. You see them all the time. That's generally what we call a WB67, meaning it's about 67 feet from the front axle to the rear axle. Very large truck. This particular roundabout is designed to accommodate that truck. And the reason we know that and can measure that is we have software that models the truck as it goes through the turning movements. And really what it does is it lays down the full envelope or full impact of the front tires and the back tires. And so trucks can get through here. The trick with roundabout design is it becomes a balance between, we have to make the roundabout large enough to get the design truck through, but we want to make it as small as possible to control speeds of passenger cars. As you can imagine, big radii and turns would allow Mini Coopers to go too fast, which is dangerous. As I mentioned, there is some right-of-way acquisition, and it is from one parcel on the north side of the roundabout. I believe it's a parcel owned by Mr. Crane. As I mentioned, we've done, I think, everything we can to minimize the impact. We've moved it west as far as possible. It was very difficult to move it south because it messed up some turning in here. One thing I will say is in our effort to minimize the impact, I think the berm here, the sound and or privacy berm, that remains intact. We're doing everything we can to maintain the trees in this area. We're still working out those details because there's some utilities that need to be reworked. The property boundaries in this area are frankly strange, and I think we've got it nailed down. This might be a surprise to staff as well, that Crane's parcel owns to the center of Honeysuckle for a small portion right here. which is not unheard of. It happens.
Matt, on that branch property, I mean, we might need just a little sliver from them as well,
We may, yeah.
potentially, as we get into design. Okay.
We may, we might try to avoid that because of, there's some historical structures on that, which could create some complications.
Okay.
But yes. So we met with city staff early and we tried to understand, well, what kind of landscape theme, if we do landscaping in the center island, what should it look like? Well, the overwhelming opinion was it should fit in the natural setting. It should fit with the theme of this area of town. And it should be reasonable to maintain. As you can imagine, if you have an elaborate series of very delicate plantings, you also have an elaborate irrigation system, which is, both of those are very expensive to maintain. So something like this is the direction we're headed. Natural theme, easy to maintain, and pretty hardy. So that said, I think I'm done with my presentation. We are happy to answer any and all questions you may have. Give me just a moment to unmute everybody. Unmute.
This is William Crane. Will our existing driveway stay the same?
Did you get that, Matt? Yeah, Mr. Crane, I think I believe your driveway location will stay the same, yes. I don't anticipate having to move it.
Okay.
Yeah, shut up.
And you said that the trees are still under consideration. What is the likelihood that we will lose some or all of those trees?
Well, let me think. Can you still hear me okay? I'm standing just a little ways from the mic.
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so we're still working with Avista on relocating their facilities. They are very clear that we want to retain the trees. I think there's two big ones there, right on the edge, if I remember right. One of them, I'm pretty certain we can retain. The second one, we're still kind of going back and forth with them on, does it stay or does it go?
And we'll meet.
I assume that Avista is still going to be using poles for the utilities in that area rather than underground wires?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and we, at the city, I mean, as soon as we have these answers, we intend to meet with you and go over all this in a lot more detail.
Okay.
And we can also.
We are concerned about the way those poles run near our trees. Every once in a while, they really scalp one of those trees. And if they were to move the poles into our property more, I think they'd probably scalp them even more. So even if they left the trees standing, they'd probably not look very good.
Well, frankly, Avista did want to take the trees initially, and we said, we
I'm
need
not
to.
surprised.
Yeah, we need to think about this. So yeah, again, we're working pretty close with them because we understand you can't get trees like that back if you take them down.
Yeah. I know when we moved in here a little over 30 years ago now, I think it was Avista, but certainly one of the utility companies suggested we take all trees down.
Yeah, well, that would certainly make
that.
I'm surprised you didn't lose any in the windstorm.
We did lose one over on the west property line, but none of those really big ones. I'm glad of that.
Okay, so everyone else, I think, has muted themselves, and that's why we can't unmute them.
I don't know if you just heard Melissa, but if there are any other questions, you might have to unmute yourself. We can't unmute you from here.
If you, and if you're having trouble doing that, say something in the chat so we can keep working on it. But it looks like the rest of the people have muted themselves, and that's why we can't unmute them.
So this is William Crane again. I have a question about the maps that we have here. Will I have access to these somehow?
Sure,
These
yeah.
these aerial views? Okay, yeah, I'd
I
like to
have that.
have these so I can look at them.
Yep, absolutely, we can provide them. You will also be given an actual right-of-way exhibit. And so there'll be more detail on that exhibit about, okay, what property is the city actually trying to acquire from me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there'll be a little more detail on those than what's shown in this particular exhibit.
Now, did you guys design the roundabouts that are on 4th Street? The ones in
The ones I-
Dalton, the ones up near the school?
Well, I was involved in it.
Yeah, not Welch Comer.
Your public works director was Alan Soderling, the one by Coeur d'Alene High School?
Yeah.
Oh, no,
Yeah, those seem to have
Dalton
improved
Dalton
the
and
situation.
Hanley I was
going
involved
forward.
in.
What was that?
I'm sorry, Mr. Crane, I misspoke. Alan was actually involved with the Dalton, no, Fourth and Hanley.
Fourth and Hanley and the ones down at NIC.
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
What's on your
all of
mind?
them work. And I couldn't agree more that that a roundabout is needed at this intersection of Honeysuckle and 4th. We've seen a lot of accidents over the years. And when we go out there to continue on, say, toward Honeysuckle Beach, sometimes we'll have to wait 3 or 4 minutes there.
Yeah. You know, one thing I didn't mention that is another interesting tidbit when you compare signals and roundabouts is when I mentioned the slide about performance, this guy here. So this is in the peak hour. So we go find the hour in the 24-hour period that's got the most traffic, and we typically design to that. And so in a roundabout, not only does the roundabout perform better in the peak hour, it performs better in any other hour, right? Whereas at a signal, you know, you've got a kind of a 50-50 chance whether you have to stop when you come up to the intersection. So even at 2 in the morning, you get off work and there's nobody there, you might have to stop. And so that's just delay that a roundabout does not introduce.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? I mean, or comments? Any comments, anything?
Well, it looks good. And I think it'll be a significant improvement. So you've done a good job.
We certainly can talk about schedule.
So right now we're in the design phase, and there's no construction funding obligated or attributed to this project yet. It doesn't mean it probably won't happen in 2021, most likely not, but I think as the years go by, the chances will go up. So I don't want anybody to think that we're going to be out there ripping and tearing in, you know, April or May.
I think it's good to share that this is Alan Sauer, the Public Works Director.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons that we hired Welch Comer to put this together for us, and they have done a wonderful job. We're really happy with it. Is that, you know, with everything that's going on, we believe there's an opportunity that we may end up with an opportunity to get some state or federal funding that isn't available. And a lot of times those projects come with a requirement that you've got something ready to go right away. So we were thinking about that, staff, Melissa, myself, and Rob, you know, going, you know, there's a good chance with everything that's going on, that's going to happen. We've seen it happen before. And so we picked a project that we thought we could get done in a timely manner, one that we were hoping that, you know, would have little or no impacts on right-of-way so that we would be able to secure that. in a timely manner so that if funding did come available from one of these sources, which is in a lot of senses almost free money. I mean, usually there's a small match, but it's usually not that bad. We'd be able to fund this with, state or federal dollars, and it's a great benefit to the taxpayers of Hayden with a very little input. So, and that's one of the reasons that we move forward, even though we don't have a specific construction time frame today, because we're going, man, we don't want to miss an opportunity to get some money from one of these other agencies if it becomes available.
Right. Now, I just thought of one question that has to do with this development that's going to be taking place this year on the soccer fields that are adjacent to our property. That developer wanted to buy a portion of our land, and I turned down the offer. I know that eventually somebody's going to want to develop this land. I certainly do not, but eventually somebody will. If that happens and a road needs to be added to this roundabout, is that possible in a situation where you've got a 3-leaf clover here?
I think that,
Rob's already kind of figured this out.
yeah, I don't think we'd add to the roundabout itself, would we?
Go ahead, Rob.
So the thought process would have been to extend a road from the north along, like into the north end of your property. I don't think that we would probably want to put another road into this roundabout, but I guess nothing's out of the question. We actually haven't seen the developer's plans yet. We've seen some preliminary versions. Sounds like they may be getting close to submitting. But yeah,
The map that they, I guess, is it called the plat that they sent me when they wanted to buy a portion of our land, had a road that came from the soccer field, and it just aimed right straight toward this roundabout area. So I would assume that they thought they would eventually get all of our land and just continue on that way, but maybe not.
So we wanted to make sure that we could still serve that north end of your property with public road. So their road may end at your north property line, and so that it could be extended in the future.
Mm-hmm. Now, I had a question about the commercial node that I read a bit about some time back, that this intersection is apparently a part of that plan. Does that commercial node potential change anything about this roundabout, or is it impacted by the roundabout at all?
It's not. This is Melissa. So yeah, commercial nodes in the comprehensive plan were identified, and this is a location for one potentially, in residential areas where small scale, like little neighborhood retail areas would be or could be potentially allowed with a conditional use permit. So we've, since, like Matt described, we've already designed this roundabout to handle trucks. I can't see anything really changing with respect to if at one point in time this does develop as some sort of a commercial node. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. Now, the question is, though, where would one enter this property if it became a commercial node?
So, I mean, that would be really at this location, and it doesn't have to be exactly at the intersection, right? So the property that's the ranch that's currently in the county, if someone came in and got annexed and wanted to do something unique on that property, I could see some small scale retail type uses in there as a part of that commercial node. So they would, access, I'm sure Rob, knowing Rob, that he would make them access far from the roundabout to not impact its function.
I think also, this Alan, if it was like on your side, if it was, something was happening there, I think it would probably be either on your close to your east or west property boundary.
Yeah.
And it would be a connection onto Honeysuckle,
Mhm.
probably preferably your west property boundary, but it wouldn't likely go into the roundabout, but that's not to say that it couldn't.
Right. Okay. Well, let me ask you this question. If somebody is going to develop this property in the future, I hope to live here for a lot of years more, and I won't develop it. But if somebody does having this roundabout a three-way roundabout rather than a four-way roundabout affect the value of this property at all?
I don't know that I could.
Interesting.
I don't know that I could. You know, I think it would really have to depend on what it was and what was happening. I just.
But for example, if somebody just bought this whole 9 acres and developed it into all residential lots, would they prefer having a four-way roundabout at that point? And would this property be worth more if that were the case?
Well, I don't know about property worth, but what Rob was talking about earlier is when we're looking at the development of the property north of you, we're trying to provide for future connectivity to your property so that we can access it from that side instead of from Honeysuckle, if at all possible.
I think we just asked if he could access it, would that have value? And I think if it was the right development that generated the kind of traffic that would benefit from a fourth leg, then possibly. If it's type of development that doesn't generate that kind of traffic, I don't know that it's really a benefit.
Residential, I don't know that it would.
I don't think residential it would.
That it would have a ton of benefit to connect to Honeysuckle if it was residential.
And this is Rob, and I'm just going to say that I don't think there's anybody here at the city who could actually answer that question. Or nor would we even kind of want to venture, I guess, one way or the other.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I think that's it. Now, Melissa said that this meeting is going to be recorded and
Yeah.
we'd have access to it.
Yep.
Is that something that's going to be easy to do, and will it happen right away?
Yeah, it'll happen probably this week sometime. I'll get it up on the website.
Okay.
So that you can just go to the city's website and watch the video, and somebody who wasn't able to attend tonight can watch as well.
Okay. The one thing that I would like to do as soon as I could is to get these graphics of the roundabout.
Okay.
But yeah, it looks good.
Melissa, I can send you PDFs of these.
That'd be great.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for participating. This was great.
Well, it's an unusual situation for me. First time I've ever done this, but
Yeah, good job getting on GoTo. All right, we'll talk to you guys later.
all right, thank you.
Tell Rob hello.
All right, I will. See you.
Thank you.